The Great Steppe, millenniums of events, hundreds of nomadic tribes and people. They lived, worked, made discoveries, conquered large tracts of lands, and left us some mysteries. To learn more about it, watch the project called Enigma of the Great Steppe. Coming up today, who kept Zataevich out of prison? Kazakh song and suite of Rachmaninov, Amrei Kashalbayev's Golden Ticket. The Symphonic Dances by Rachmaninov is a profoundly tragic masterpiece. It is the composer's last work, written in 1940 in the USA. It combines the thoughts of the daughter who was left in Paris occupied by the fascists, reflection about the future of Europe and the fate of people. Sergei Vasilievich has been working tirelessly for 10 hours every day to finish the composition. He started in the middle of summer and completed his creation in the first decade of August. The premiere took place in January next year in Chicago, and in 1943 people of the Soviet Union heard the suite. Some people detected the horror experienced by a man before the death. Others accepted the symphonic dances as a symbol of the struggle between good and evil. But our forefathers heard the native motifs of our folk song in these notes. What Kazakh melody is encoded in one of Rachmaninov's greatest works? Is Alexander Zataevich involved in this? And why is it never too late to start over? The great ethnographer, musician, and composer, national artist of the Kazakh SSR, Alexander Zataevich, was born on March 20th, 1869, in the town called Bolkhov, Orel province, in the family of a civil servant. Alexander Viktorovich. Ancestors through the male line were military. His father participated in the Battle of Sevastopol, and his grandfather distinguished himself in battles against Napoleon. Through the maternal side, the future collector of Kazakh folk songs was a relative of the Ananikos family, who later took part in the Russian Revolutionary movement. In 1877, his father died, and grandfather Alexander sent his grandson to the Orel Military Gymnasium, which he graduated with distinction. But a talented young man decided to devote his life to music, which he loved since childhood. He had a wonderful music education, piano education, so to speak. He was a good pianist, and he was a comprehensively advanced man. He played the piano perfectly and knew European and Russian piano music. The piano was like a pen in his hand. Indeed, his musical talent revealed itself quite early. At the age of 12, Alexander tried to write music works for the piano, but the family drama changed his plans after admission to the Moscow Conservatory. To help his widowed mother, Zataevich started working as an accountant assistant at the Provincial Board of Polotsk City, which is located on the territory of modern Belarus. Due his duties, Zataevich was sent to Poland, where he was also involved in musical and social activities. He worked as a music critic in the newspaper Warsaw Diary and published more than 100 articles and reviews about the works of European and Russian composers and performers. He can be regarded as a hard-working person. Zataevich worked not only with Warsaw Diary. He held different positions, moving from one city to another, organized concerts of Russian singers and musicians, wrote reviews about the works of Polish, Russian, and Western European composers and performers, and recorded samples of Polish folklore. He also had amazing acquaintances with different people. So in November 1896, during Rachmaninov's tour in the Polish city called Lodz, after one of the concerts, Zataevich has shown his works to the master. The composer understood that the mazurka, Polish folk dance presented to him, was a professional work, and recommended to publish them in the music magazine of Jurgensen. Dear friend, Alexander Viktorovich, I am writing later than I promised. First of all, let me tell you that Jurgensen will publish your 3 works. We will want these works to be different. That is, they should not have the same title and type. I am sorry, but I am not able to pay for them. I promise to pay you while publishing your next works. Now sit down and write and send me these 3 works. They became friends. He did not see Rachmaninov in person again, but they corresponded with each other. It was a formal correspondence, but they kept in touch. Then Rachmaninov composed 6 more mazurkas, which he devoted to Zataevich. And then the First World War began. Zataevich continued working in Warsaw until July 1915. And he left Poland only when the most beautiful city of Europe was bombed out. The situation at home was not better. Russia was torn apart by distemper and revolution. In 1917, Alexander Viktorovich sent his family to Orenburg to stay away from strives and chaos. A few years later, he joined his relatives and moved to the new capital of the Kyrgyz Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic.
Вот это интересный момент, как он попал в Оренбург. Это замалчивается.
The interesting moment is how he got to Orenburg.
Что это была
It is not known exactly how he moved.
направление.
I think that authorities sent him there to keep him far from the capital.
Это было своеобразное такое не ссылка, но отстранение от столицы.
It should be noted that the consequences of the First World War and the subsequent Civil War reached the most remote corners of the Soviet Union. People were starving, destruction and epidemics were everywhere. In such difficult conditions, Alexander Zataevich showed his interest in music, the thing that always accompanied the life of the Kazakhs. I got an opportunity to devote myself entirely to my favorite musical work. It was not the sphere of composition and criticism, but the sphere of collecting and fixing the enormous, previously unknown wealth of Kazakh people. In the result of the work with the monumental dimensions, it became possible to complete the biggest job of my life. He described this period like, I started the epic of Kazakh music. He called his work Kazakh Epic, which he started in 1920 and continued till his death in 1936. He collected Kazakh music and songs. At that time, Alexander Viktorovich was above 50. However, the energy and enthusiasm of the 51-year-old musician wasn't on a high level. He began to record and systematize Kazakh folk music, cues, instrumental pieces, and songs from the first time. No one has ever done that before. It is interesting, when did Zataevich get acquainted with the works of folk singers? Which city is mentioned in his first documented work? And which laureate and nominee of the Nobel Prize liked Kazakh music? Alexander Viktorovich, his greatest work began with a regular club concert. After arriving in Orenburg, Zataevich first started working as an accountant. But his salary was not so high, and he moonlighted in the cinemas and clubs playing the piano. Once at one of such events, he heard the performance of Kazakh singers for the first time.
Поскольку он был очень творческая личность, его сразу привлекло.
Since he was a very creative person, this phenomenon of folk art attracted him.
Было настолько широко распространено.
This folk art was so widespread and was an integral part of lifestyle.
Вот это его поразило. Он видел вот здесь, в народном творчестве, явление.
And in folk art, he saw the sign of professionalism. But this was only the oral professionalism.
Нефиксированного.
It was not recorded, and he realized that it was necessary to make notes.
Как-то все-таки компенсировать.
He began to record.
Этот факт незафиксированности сделать записи. Он стал записывать.
Realizing that the origins of folk art should be sought among people, Alexander Viktorovich visited markets, clubs, and courses for Soviet workers. When there was an opportunity to communicate with the Kazakhs, he tried to find the so-called correspondence, people who could share music or songs. Zataevich had notable aspects, and he could write down everywhere where he met people. For example, he could write down on the club stage, on the street bench. He wrote continuously. And what was the benefit of it? It turned out that he was impressed by melodiousness of Kazakh music. He admired this music and believed that it needs to be recorded, because no one wrote about it before. Of course, there were notes of travelers, but only Zataevich could study this and write it down. The first work which Zataevich recorded was a sonorous and cheerful composition. His first song recorded in Orenburg is called Ahau Simei, and he wrote about this song in his book. He mentioned this song everywhere, and he started to record works of other performers. He studied Yergali Aldongarov's works more than others. Yergali Aldongarov did not only dictate the lyrics to Zataevich, but also invited and introduced the young guys who were studying music. They were Sergei Kozhamgulov, Lyubay Umerzakov, Isa Zbaizakov, Sakyen Safulin. There were more than 100 people. Different people were Zataevich's correspondents. They had different spheres of activity and social classes. For example, Akin, improvising poet Isa Baizakov, and singer Amre Kashaubayev, statesman, revolutionary Oraz Jandosov, and public figure, scientist, Turkologist Ahmet Baytursinov, one of the founders of Kazakh literature, Beimbet Mailin, and writer Sabit Mukhanov, legendary Soviet commissar Alebi Jangildin, the first East member of the political party Komsomol, Gani Muratbayev. At that time, Orenburg was the capital, and mainly intelligentsia lived there, and young people came to study there. Zataevich was recording all of them. There were Sara Yesova, Alma Orazbayeva, and others. In Orenburg, he managed to write a lot of songs and music. The People's Commissariat for Education highly appreciated his work. They instructed Zataevich to drive through the steppe and collect more materials. A meeting was held on this occasion, where he told and described everything, and received the instruction on that meeting. Zataevich particularly emphasized the improvisational talent of Kazakh Akins. The master was amazed how eloquent poets of the steppe could easily tell the story on any topic suggested by him, choosing rhythm and sonorous rhymes. Even today, we can find this genre in the so-called rap battles. It is called freestyle and is valued higher than the rest of genres precisely because participants do not have the opportunity to get prepared in advance. It should be noted that Alexander Viktorovich found a kind word for each of the heroes mentioned in his books. If you look through the book, you will find about 1,000 names. Zataevich wrote, "Very handsome and charming Sakyen Sifulin. He visited me when I was in Orenburg, and he had amazing songs about Lyubay Umerzakov. It turned out that we did not know that he was the performer of songs before starting his career in the theater. Lyubay is one of the founders of the first Kazakh theater, and before that he sang. He had more than 100 songs. Zataevich wrote about him in his book. What a talented singer he is. Here is how Zataevich described talent of Isa Baizakov. Isa Baizakov is a young, smart, and temperamental poet-improviser and a good singer with great plasticity and expressiveness. He wrote about every singer and poet, about Kurmangazi, Tatimbet, Akan Seri, and others." Zataevich did not just record the compositions, but added a beautiful artistic description of each of them. He sought the inspiration and information from the most faithful source, people. As per the traditions of the Kazakh people, music did not sound without story before it. Before performing particular cue or even sometimes song, the performer always respectfully told where he heard this piece, whom he heard it from, and what was described in it, what work was related to it, revealed its contents, and then said, "Listen how my Dombra would tell about it." The author has made enormous efforts to collect Kazakh songs. It was difficult and painstaking work. Alexander Zataevich later recalled how the whole family got typhus and they were sick during 7 weeks. Often they got through moments of no money. As a consequence of this, there was hunger and chronic energy deficiency. But he did not give up and continued his work. Finally, I've collected about 1,300 musical notations. I've chosen the best 1,000 and in August 1923 presented my works 1,000 Kazakh Songs, the Kazakh Central Executive Committee, and I was awarded the title of National Artist of the Kyrgyz Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic. Now it is Kazakhstan. My work was published in March 1925 in Moscow by the National Commissariat of Enlightenment. It is known that one of the copies of his book, Alexander Viktorovich, sent to Romain Rolland, with whom he corresponded. The French writer, Nobel laureate, and part-time scientist musicologist highly appreciated the talent of the Kazakh performers. They say that he tried to play a few melodies and thus was able to discover the musical soul of the people unknown to him. It was a big pleasure to receive your great work, 1,000 Songs of Kazakh People, in the first series of your own compositions on the Kazakh themes for the anniversary of my birth. I'm very surprised, but these melodies sounded so familiar. They are obviously close to that European music, which was once replaced and muted by the learned music. I'm sending you 2 of my books in response. Zataevich was very proud of the letter received from Romain Rolland. He always quoted him in his lectures and reports on Kazakh music, and even wrote it in the preface to his next collection called 500 Kazakh Folk Songs and Cues. According to some information, 2 musicologists met in 1935 at Maxim Gorky's summer house in Moscow. They played the piano and had friendly conversation in a cozy atmosphere. It's hard to believe, but this could not happen if several years earlier, Alexei Maximovich, the real name of the Russian writer and 5-time nominee for the Nobel Prize, had not helped Alexander Viktorovich resolving the most complicated issue. One of Alexander Zataevich's haters wrote denunciation of the nobleman. This denunciation stated that a well-known ethnographer serving in Warsaw as an officer for special assignments under the Governor-General of the city, participated in the suppression of workers. It was an absurd accusation, but social prevention was strengthened in the country, and Zataevich was on the verge of being declared enemy of the people, and only a miracle could save him from this. The other day, I visited Maxim Gorky. He asked what I was going to do in the future. I showed him the collection of 500 songs. I also added that I was no longer an active worker in Kazakhstan. The authorities cut my pension off, which was 200 rubles, like I was a principal criminal hiding from them. The magazine Our Achievements published it was because of his social origin and biography. After listening to this, Gorky said that it was ignorance. He is clever, gentle, and a kind man, but like an incurable skeptic, I'm afraid that his confidence in the soonest and successful resolution of my proceedings is premature. Alexander Viktorovich doubted the soonest resolution needlessly. Gorky did not only resolve the issue with a pension, but thanks to Alexei Maximovich's petition, Zataevich managed to avoid arrest and continued his activity. Do you know which prominent Kazakh academician did the ethnographer know? How did Zataevich help Amrei Kashalbayev? And why the hearing of the collector of folk songs considered being ideal? Zataevich has established relations with many people for years of working on materials for his books. Not only performers introduced the national art to the ethnographer. For example, it is known that a young engineer, the future president of the National Academy of Sciences of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Kanish Satpayev, passed 25 pieces to Alexander Viktorovich during their meeting in Moscow. The scientist and archaeologist Alkay Margulan introduced the songs of Abay Kununbayev to Zataevich. The musicologist treated the correspondence with respect, and he was fond of Kazakh melodies.
Александр Затаевичтің Kazakh музыкасына әсері.
The activity of Alexander Zataevich had significant impact on the formation of Kazakh music.
Қай республиканың қай халықтың кітабы
Only
1925
Zataevich conducted such studies in those distant 20s of the 20th century.
То есть Орынбордан Қызылордаға көшпей тұрып шыққан.
Zataevich usually made notes by listening to the song or melody.
Осыны керемет салмақ осы қазақ халқының әнімен
Sergei Kozhamkulov told me that Zataevich loved to gather all people in one place and then made musical notations.
айтып еді маған. Бұл Затаевич дейді.
Someone was singing songs and he concurrently was composing notes. Can you imagine? He had tremendous hearing.
Сонда ойлап отырмын, бұл кісінің мына тыңдау қабілеті қандай?
The fact that Zataevich had an absolute hearing is recognized by many people. He wrote down notes in real mode. However, focusing on the so-called musical language, Alexander Viktorovich did not always manage to write down the spoken language. It's good that later the words of many compositions were restored by the musicologist, PhD in art criticism, Boris Grigorievich Yerzakovich. He guessed songs looking on notes and wrote down the words. In addition to collecting, recording, and processing songs, Alexander Zataevich promoted Kazakh music and Kazakh performers. He organized many concerts and performances in Moscow and abroad. In fact, Amrei Kashaobayev managed to get in France only thanks to Zataevich. The chairman of the People's Commissariat for Education of Russia, Lunancharsky, asked who could go to France. Zataevich recommended Amrei Kashaobayev. Thus, Amrei was included in the list of people who would go to Paris. Zataevich, together with Amrei, composed notes to the songs Dudarai, Ush Dos, Balkadisha, Bes Kulagir, Agashayak. In total, 11 songs were collected in his repertoire. In 1925, Amrei visited Paris, and in 1927 he went to Frankfurt am Main. Zataevich managed to record Amrei's live voice on phonograph. It is worth noting that the famous tenor has never studied at the conservatory. And Alexander Viktorovich highly appreciated Amrei's natural talent, voice, and breath. At the same time, Zataevich was worried that Amrei Kashaobayev could forget the folk-performing traditions, having spent a long time in the city, far from the steppe. But this did not happen. Zataevich wrote down the song of many famous people. These people are no longer among us, but the notes are still alive. The students of the conservatory, academy in Astana, music colleges, and music schools study Zataevich's books. So Zataevich paved the way for the Kazakhs. Needless to say, Kazakhstani composers and intellectuals highly appreciated efforts and results of Zataevich's works. He admired everyone, and everyone admired him, including Sergei Rachmaninov. Dear friend Alexander Viktorovich, I sincerely thank you for sending the miniatures on the Kazakh topics. Some of them I used in my symphonic dance suites with pleasure, especially the most beautiful one, Yapurai. There are following words in Alexander Zataevich's autobiography. I feel a special closeness to the talented Kazakh people. And it is thanks to penetration into the realm of strong emotions and experiences, without which the enormous work on recording music would be a thoughtless formal task. I will be proud of the highly honorable title of the People's Artist of Kazakhstan. We are proud that the music of the great steppe and melodies of our ancestors conquered the heart of the famous collector of Kazakh folk songs. Thank you, Alexander Viktorovich.